Hi everyone, welcome to another video of Don't Be Average. In this video, you will see what all topics are very important within Python for the interview of data scientist roles, and also what are the possible questions within each topic.
I wear the crown.
The first topic is basic syntax. So this includes the fundamental syntax and structure of Python code. It also emphasizes the readability of the code. So you have to write the code in a way that it is readable. You have to assign the variables in a way that it is easy to understand. And also it emphasizes on the fact of indentation, which is quite important in Python. And also it includes the differentiation between different versions of Python. For example, Python 2 versus Python 3. These two are having some significant differences when it comes to coding, some significant differences when it comes to the libraries, how they function. So those differences, the basic syntax is what is covered in this area. Now we'll come to the possible questions that you may be asked in the interview within this topic. So one such question is, explain the difference between equality operator and is operator in Python. So both are trying to see if two objects or two variables are same or not, but why do we use one instead of the other, in which scenario, and how are they different. Another question could be, how does Python handle memory management and what is the significance of garbage collection? We all know that Python has a very efficient memory management process, but how does it actually work? So some questions around that also can come in the interviews. The next topic is data structures. So data structures are very important when it comes to beginner level Python coding, and to some extent it is also important for advanced Python programming questions. So this is where we understand the use cases of each data structure. So in Python there are multiple ways to store the data. There is list, there is tuple, there is set, then there is data frame. Now when to use what, questions around these may come in. What is a list, what is a tuple, when do we use tuple, and when do we use list? So we'll come to the questions, but this is more around the structures of the data. How do we manipulate each data structures? What all manipulations are possible in case of set? What all data manipulations are possible in case of a list? So basically, to sense that when you are coding, you know which data structure to use for your particular use case. Now let's see the interview questions. So in the data structure area, there could be interview questions around the difference between two data structures. A very common question that is asked is, explain the difference between a list and a tuple, and when do you prefer a list over tuples, and vice versa. Another question could be, explain the role of a dictionary in Python and provide an example of a practical use case. So what is a dictionary and when do we use it? Unless you're prepared beforehand, it might take some effort to answer this. The next topic is control flow. So control flow basically governs the flow of a program through conditional statements. So if else statements, then loops, for while loops, and elif, all these are included in the control flow. The conditional statements for any decision making, this is something which comes handy when you write the code, when you put conditions in the code and you want to put loops. So how efficiently you know how to put the loops so that your code is performing well and it is getting the exact thing done that you want it to do. Now let's look at the possible questions. One such question could be, write a Python code snippet to determine if a given year is a leap year using an if-else statement. It's a very simple question, but it's good to be prepared for such questions. Another question that is asked is explain the purpose of the elif statement in a nested decision making structure. So we can use else, but then why are we using elif? What is the advantage of it? When do we use one over another? That understanding is something that can be asked in the interview for this topic. The next topic is functions. So you can write your code in a monolithic manner, but in case you write it in a modular pattern, you have to write functions, and that is something which makes your code elegant, and that is the best practices in most of the cases. So it's very important to understand how functions work. What is the best way to write a function? How can you define a function with the parameters? And what all functions are already there and are very popular? And do you know how to use them or not? For example, lambda function is such a function that is quite important. So the interviewer may try to see you are aware of this function or not. Now, if we look at the interview questions that are asked in this topic, so you may be asked to create a Python function that calculates the Fibonacci sequence up to a given number. Then another question that is asked is compare and contrast the regular functions and the lambda functions in Python. If you can answer this question, it'll give a sense that you know Python in depth. The next topic is very important for data science and data analytics is the packages NumPy and Pandas. So these are two packages which actually helps us in advanced data manipulation and analysis with arrays and then tabular data. So for NumPy it's array, and for Pandas it's a tabular format of data which we call Pandas data frame. In NumPy basically we can do array creation, we can do indexing. In case of Pandas, we have this specific tabular data format called data frames. So we can do series data cleaning, we can do data manipulation, which is specifically made for data analysis. So how these two packages function, how can we use them more efficiently, is something the interviewer may try to sense if you are applying for a data scientist or a data analyst role. The questions that are asked in these topics are, say, how would you concatenate two NumPy arrays horizontally and vertically? One more question is, explain the process of merging two Pandas data frame based on a common column. So this is just a glimpse of it, but there are a lot of utilities of NumPy and Pandas. If you go through the documentation of these packages, that will be the best thing to do. That will make your data analysis or data science work very easier. The next topic is data cleaning. So this is where the techniques for imputing missing values or understanding outliers and how to remove them. In general, cleaning of your data, understanding if your data makes sense or not, and if any column is having some unwanted values and why are they there. So those kind of processing, pre-processing that we do before the modeling or before the visualization is a data cleaning. So there could be some questions in the interview around that, especially if you are applying for a data analyst role, then this topic would be even more emphasized. So let's look at the interview questions. Explain different methods to impute missing values in a Pandas data frame. That is something which is asked almost in every data analyst interview. What are the methods? There are 10 to 12 methods actually, and I have a detailed video on that. I will put the link on top. Then the next question that can come in is, how would you detect and handle outliers in a dataset using Python? These are very simple questions, very expected, but it's better to be prepared beforehand, right? The next one is visualization. So we have these boring numbers, we have these data sets. Now we need to turn them into exciting pictures, exciting dashboards. That is what we call as visualization. In this topic, when it comes to Python, we have two very important libraries, which are Matplotlib and Seaborn. So these are the libraries which create various types of plots and charts. They are customizable and they maintain, you can actually customize them to maintain a certain aesthetic, and it is very useful when you want to interpret the results of your model or you want to explain the descriptives of your data to your stakeholders. Questions like create a dual axis line and a bar chart using Matplotlib to represent two related data sets. One more question could be, how can you use Seaborn to create a heat map to visualize the correlation matrix of a data set? The correlation matrix is something which is there in the EDA step of almost every analysis. The next is obviously the statistical concepts like descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, hypothesis testing, then probability distribution. All these things are very important. Now, how to use those concepts and write a code around that in Python is also important. So you can be asked, explain the difference between correlation and causation in statistics, and write a Python code to calculate both and compare the differences. Probably you're given a data set and you're asked to calculate this. Another question could be how to conduct a t-test on Python. And let's say you find the p-value, and then you may be asked, what does this p-value imply? If it is less than 0.05, what does this mean and why? So that's like a fusion of concepts and the programming skills in Python. Next topic is obviously machine learning basics. You have to understand the algorithms in machine learning. You should be able to understand what is supervised modeling, what is unsupervised modeling, and how to train and test a model. What are the metrics that you should look at when you're building a model? And because these are concepts, but when you want to turn this into practical reality, you have to code it in some or the other way. And Python is one way to code it. So the interviewer would try to understand if you know how to implement these concepts in Python. So let's see the questions that can come in. One could be describe the bias variance trade-off in the context of machine learning. This is something asked a lot during interviews these days. That's why I put it here. And then another question could be, how does a decision tree work? Build a decision tree using Python code and explain it. The next topic is scikit-learn. So this is a library. It's a tool, you can say. It has a lot of functionality within itself, which includes utilities for machine learning tasks, includes model building, evaluation, data pre-processing functions. So it's like a toolkit for data scientists or data analysts. It includes all the functionalities inbuilt and customizable for data pre-processing, for model building, and for evaluation. If you know how to use this, that's a very good added advantage. Now let's see what all questions can come in this topic. Explain the purpose of the fit and transform methods in scikit-learn. There are two methods in scikit-learn which are heavily used when you're trying to build a model. Now, do you know the difference between these two and when are they used? Another question is, how would you handle imbalance classes in a classification problem using scikit-learn? So we know that imbalance classes in case of classification problem is a very, very widely seen problem. Whenever you have a classification problem, there's a chance that your two classes are not properly balanced. In such cases, it is very difficult to build a classification model and maintain its accuracy across all categories. So there are techniques, there are methods which are already inbuilt in scikit-learn which help in this scenario. Now, if you know how to use those, that is an added advantage for a data scientist. So the interviewer would try to understand if you know how to use these techniques or not. The next one is web scraping. So web scraping is extracting data from websites using Python. So there are tools like Beautiful Soup and few others which actually provides access to the online information, and they do a little bit of data cleaning for you. They do little bit of HTML tag removal for you so that the data is kind of usable. So the basics of HTML structures and web elements is something which is required in this area. And also, do you know how to utilize libraries like Beautiful Soup or web scraping, other web scraping libraries or not? That is something they will try to understand. Now, for example, they may ask you, how would you extract specific information such as all hyperlinks from a web page using Beautiful Soup? In this package, there's a function which actually does that, and it's a single line code. So if you know that, it'll be great, and you would be able to extract all the hyperlinks in a given page without even going to that page at one go. So that is something you can be asked in the interview. Then the second could be, you can discuss what is the ethical consideration or challenges that are associated with web scraping. You are actually extracting information from somebody else's website. Then how does it reflect on the ethical consideration of the data scientist or the organization that is involved in doing it? So it's a bit theoretical, but while answering this, having a sensible attitude and trying to understand the risks and added value also would be very helpful. So that is all. I have tried to cover the topics that are quite important in the Python interviews these days, and also tried to include the questions that are being asked in the recent interviews across organizations. I would like to wish you guys all the best if you guys are preparing for these interviews. I have made detailed videos answering many of these interview questions you would be able to see in my channel. Have a look at those. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comment. See you in the next video.